and we have a very special guest today. It's Julie Hunter, the owner of the Hunter Studios. How you doing, Julie?
I'm good. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing great. Um, yeah, so we have so much to talk about. You have this new studio that you just opened. You do photography, you do video, you do corporate, you do weddings, you do boudoir, which we'll ask you about later. Um,
Everything.
Everything. You do a ton of stuff, which is so much fun because we'll have so much to talk about. Right now, I'm just going to do a quick ad for a partner, Restream, and then I'll come right back.
Okay, cool.
Hey everybody, this is Restream. It takes your lives and sends it to several places like YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. It also has a live studio, which is very cool, and you should check it out if you want to do lives. It's a service I'm using right now to send to a bunch of places. Check out Restream. There is a live link in the comments on this live broadcast, so check out Restream. And Julie, so where do we start? Where do we start? I'm going to ask you the first question I always ask everyone because it's a good place to start. When did you know you wanted to be an artist, be creative, take photos, do video? Were you in high school? Were you 5? Were you in college?
So, when I was younger, I used to have like a bunch of disposable camera. Like this was back in the 80s and whatnot, and I would have all the disposable cameras, and I kind of felt like I was the kind of the photographer of the family, but not serious, of course. I was too young for that. And then once, like all of us, maybe in our 40s, photography really wasn't that wasn't a career. That was just a hobby. And so I didn't really my education didn't go that way, like toward photography. I didn't really get into the idea of actually doing photography as a career or even more seriously until I was in my mid 30s.
Oh, wow.
And I had teamed up with a lady who was moving here from California, and she is a very successful wedding photographer. She became my mentor. And so I second shot for her for, dozens and dozens of weddings, and kind of got the taste for it then. Another friend of mine actually went to college and kind of learned, like she taught me the creative side of it, like how to, hone that eye and, perspective and really getting the picture out of your head and into the camera. And my other friend went to college and learned the ISOs and the apertures and all that kind of stuff. And I love the technical side of photography. So I was like, oh yeah, teach me that. And so those two things combined, and then it kind of just blew up from there. I think the main thing I like to talk about when it comes to why I am who I am and where I got to today is I joined a group in Atlanta called the Atlanta Photographers Guild, and we shot all the time together. It was like basically a social function for photographers, and we would shoot models like as practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after a while, it became a place just to hang out and network and stuff. And that's another huge part of who I am in this industry is, yes, I like to take photos, but I really love to network. I really love to be with people and just like you, ask them questions and where they came from and why they're doing what they're doing and that kind of thing. So
I just had a thought that's very cool about cameras and lenses and ISOs and all that kind of stuff. Do you think it's easier now with the digital, and I forget what the Apple program is called that everybody uses, that they sort of color correct the photo?
Oh, Photoshop? Yeah, and Lightroom?
Lightroom, yeah, Lightroom, Photoshop. Do you feel like with digital it's easier to be a photographer or harder versus the film?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I mean, I know I basically got my start with, I had a film camera for several years before I bought a digital. And so but I really shot on auto. I mean, don't tell anybody, it's just between us, right?
Right.
Us and
Nobody's
who's
listening.
watching. But I did start with a film camera when I was 25. My mom gave me my first, and it was an SLR. So it literally had like one of those lenses that came off, and it was one of the old Rebels. And but anyway, fast forward to when I started second shooting for the lady. I bought my first digital camera, and I would say for sure, because you're getting to see exactly what you're taking a picture of right immediately away. You don't have to worry about, am I getting it, or is it too dark or light? You can check right there, but with film, you have to really know what you're doing to make sure you're getting what you want. It's kind
Right.
of like, I guess, a surprise once you develop that film.
Right. I know that as a video editor, I was in New York, and for the first time, I cut a film on film in my
Mm.
20s, and I absolutely hated it. You had all these literally bins, which they call them in the digital world now also, but they were these almost like clothing bins, and you had clothespins, and you had to hang up each take, and then you had to sync up the audio, and there were several tracks of audio, and you laid it on this whole thing called a Steenbeck, and I was like, and we had glue and cement to put it together, and I was like, this is awful. I do not want to do this for my life. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, hey, down the hall, there's an online edit room that just came out called Avid. Maybe you should check that out. And I
Oh,
did,
nice.
and that became my career for 25 years because
Oh,
that
wow.
that made sense to me. You know what I mean? It made total
Mm-hmm.
sense. Whereas this thing where you take like 4 days to do 2 minutes of a movie, oh my God, I could never do that. It was
Yeah.
just like torture. It was totally, totally different than digital.
Oh yeah. And I'll say when I started doing video, like it was exciting. I love to do new things. And so like I'm a bit ADD when it comes to, trying to do one thing or another. Like, so when I was, also another part of my career is working for Apertrent, which is a local camera rental company in Atlanta. I worked for them for like 6 to 7 years. And while I already had like pretty good knowledge of cameras and photography, I started to tinker around with doing video,
Right.
and then like starting to take a piece of gear home on the weekends just to learn it, just so that I could be a better customer service agent, really. So that when someone would come in and say, hey, how do you use this glide cam? I was like, I don't really know. So like I started taking them home so I could have a better knowledge of how to use that glide cam or whatever. So the one thing I was going to mention is like, when you switch over and start doing like video, it's so frustrating because you can't really like, like photography, I can throw up a sneak peek from the day. I can be like, oh, look at this picture I took today. And it's really quick and easy to get one up. But like
Right.
video, you can't really like throw up a quick, anything that day unless you just go home and start like pulling all that footage in and like looking for a good piece or something like that. So it's not quite as easy.
No, it's not. But even on the film sets now, I know that there's actual jobs where people are literally on set. Because I talked to a guy who did this. He was literally on set, and they're taking in the cards from the red camera, or the airy camera, or whatever. And his job was just to like roughly set up a rough cut for like Baby Driver.
Oh,
And so
right,
they
right,
shoot the
right. Yeah.
scene, and they lay out the takes, and so the director can sort of fast forward through the takes and make sure that he's getting somewhat what he wants, like,
Right, right, right.
and see angles and if he has coverage and all this kind of stuff. So some
Hmm.
people are doing that right on and I've seen that a lot in TV and film where the editor goes to the set and they start editing literally is when they're shooting the camera, they're taking the
Oh,
cards
for
out.
sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, if I had a big budget, of course I'd have an editor right beside me and, making sure we're getting, but yeah, it's definitely like anybody who does video knows like having a monitor is super important. So you can make sure
Right.
like if you're looking at some little tiny screen, that's not going to show you what you're getting. You really need to have like a pretty good sized monitor to obviously watch what you're doing and making sure that you're getting the angle and there's nothing weird in the background and et cetera,
Right.
just like any other thing you're doing, so.
Yeah, I definitely I worked for the NBA a lot, and there was a lot of these E&G crews who've gotten shoot stuff, and like you said, they only had the little screen because they were literally running down the hallway to get interviews and with NBA players or whatever, and The whole time that they were doing this interview, there was like this sort of light flickering in the background that they couldn't see because the screen was so small. And it was so
Oh yeah.
distracting that we had to like crop the guy's head, like this much so that we would get the distracting light in the interview. So stuff like that, you miss stuff definitely without the big monitor. But let's talk
Oh
about
yeah.
this is so exciting. I saw it on Facebook. We're seeing it behind you. I'm
Yeah.
going to bring up a little picture. Let's talk about your new studios, Hunter Studios.
Yeah, so new. In fact, that I just got my certificate of occupancy this last week, so it's like baby new. We have been working on the place for about 3 months, just waiting for the city to let us open, and basically, like like I said, one of my big things about the industry is networking and talking to people and all that. So for the last, 20 years or so, in the time that I've, been a photographer, I've been an admin of that big group, Atlanta Photographers Guild. I've worked at, Aperturant, met thousands of customers. I've had such an amazing resource of being able to ask people questions and what would you do about this or what would you like to see in a studio, and so it's always kind of been in my heart and in my dreams, like to run my own studio and do it the way I want to and have my own aesthetic, and so this kind of popped up over the summer where I looked on Craigslist and looked at this place and kind of was like, okay, what's really wrong with this place? Because it looks too good to be true. And I brought a friend with me just to make sure that I wasn't like, I have a tendency to get up in the clouds. And so their job was to make sure I was like planted on the ground and making sure this was like viable and we could do it. And after literally about 2 weeks of negotiations, I signed a contract and we started moving forward to get this place open. So I'm super excited that we're open and we're available to rent to other people. And of course, while yes, I am a photographer, this main purpose of this is to rent out to other photographers and even videographers, like for music videos or whatever, yoga studio, whatever you
What
want
is
it to be. That's what
what
that's what
is
it is.
what is the square footage?
It's there's 2,200 square feet of open warehouse space up top, and then I have another 1,400 in the basement.
Wow, that's a
And
lot of
overall,
space.
there's about 4,400 square feet, including this nice big lobby. So there's tons of space, and then there's probably about an acre of outdoor green space, which I love because that's something that you don't typically get at other Atlanta studios. Most studios around Atlanta are, office spaces. And so when you walk outside, it's parking lot or it's a city street or
Yes.
it's whatever. This place is nice and big on the inside, when the weather, kind of makes you be inside, but there's also this huge space outside that's green and lush. And even though it's technically my parking lot, there's grass that's grown over and I'm not going to get rid of that. I'm going to keep it pretty natural. And I mean, I could talk about it for a long time, but I'm really excited about like all the different things that this place offers. So,
Right. I want to bring up a couple photos here. First, I have the photo. There's a little bit of delay on the
okay.
Facebook, but it's the one with the chair and the light and the piano.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
and those are the walls there, right? That are all sort of worn and um,
Right. They're kind of peeling and,
peeling. Yeah,
yeah.
that's very cool.
Everyone's been asking me like, hey, are you gonna paint over there? I was like, heck no, this is what I
Oh
love
no,
about
no,
this
no, no, no,
place.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And then I just want to ask you because I started this podcast during COVID. I started it in April. I researched it for 6 months or something. But you started this during COVID, and I saw you mention that somewhere in one of your websites or Facebook posts or something.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy is that? And this leads to a
Right.
question that I ask a lot of artists because I consider you to be an artist. Like
Hmm.
myself, is that you have to be a little bit crazy to be an artist, right? Like, oh, it's
Yeah.
COVID. Oh, it's so much money. There's a huge investment. What are you doing? And then you get people from
Yeah.
both sides saying, go for it. It's crazy. So do you feel like that? Do you feel like you just like block all that stuff and say, I'm just doing it?
Yeah. So I feel like opening any business, right, is crazy.
Right.
Opening any business at any time of any, any time of the year is it's a risk. It's always going to be a risk. And so that's what I kept telling myself about opening it. It was kind of on the tail end of the quarantine because we
Right.
were, Georgia was like locked down until the beginning of June. And I found this place literally June 8th. So like almost right as we were kind of peeking the door back open for businesses to kind of start back up, that's when I kind of started with this. So now there's a whole lot more places open. The restrictions are a lot lighter. We're, I think, in phase 2 in Georgia or something like that. So like we're kind of already kind of moving on to kind of getting back to like I've been asking around to different people, like, are you taking pictures again? Are you starting to create more films? Like, what are you doing? And because people were starting to get back in the role of things, I kind of felt like it was time. It was all like a good time. Also, talk about timing, and the aesthetic of this particular studio is the closing of the goat farm. The temporary closing of the goat farm is happening this year, where they are renovating that place.
Okay.
And so the goat farm is infamous. I don't know are you familiar with that particular place? So it has a very specific warehouse aesthetic, right?
Right.
And so when I found this place, I was like, wow, so if the goat farm's going to be closed for a couple of years, this could be your temporary new home, while they get that place renovated. Feel free to come and use this place because it has the very same feel to it, except for it may be a little on the cleaner side. Maybe not much, but it's a little cleaner than the goat farm was. It's very hard to keep a warehouse clean. It's not going to be pristine, but it's going to be a little cleaner. But we do have very nice bathrooms. I'll say that.
Well, as far as the whole COVID thing, I know people are nervous. What are your, I mean, you don't have a lot of people there. It's not like you're a restaurant, but are people wearing masks? Are they, what is the protocol at Hunter Studios as far as that? Because I know it's still happening.
Right. It's really according to how comfortable the photographer and because, again, my client is the photographer who comes here and brings their client. So it's like a 2-step process, and I'm comfortable with whatever they're comfortable with. And with 2,200 square feet up here, it's not like you're on top of each other. There's plenty of space to be, do the whole social distancing thing. And if you need to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you feel comfortable, it's fine. There's plenty of space here, and it gets cleaned, and and there's really not a lot of stuff that you're touching necessarily here either. You just kind of come in and take your pictures and you leave, and the bathrooms get clean. That's about the only thing that's pretty commonplace for everybody to be touching. So so we're doing the basic what we need to do to make sure people are safe and all of that, at the same time trying to get back to work.
Right. Let's get back to work.
Yeah.
So let me this may be a video question, but I know a lot of studios in Atlanta have psychs and green screens. Like, is that a possibility for you if someone wants to do a shoot like that, or?
So I'm not going to have a psych wall, and I'll tell you why. I feel like every other place in Atlanta offers psych walls or green screens or whatever. And I'm really trying to, there are so many options in Atlanta for you to rent studio space and stuff. And I really wanted to be different from some of the other places that offer the very same white walls or very office-like, look to them. I really wanted this to be a specific aesthetic that necessarily wouldn't be the psych wall that you see in everybody else's space.
Right.
So this is definitely, like I probably say it 1,000 times, but, this is definitely warehouse. It's, peeling paint. It's wood walls. It's
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but while you're saying this, I'm putting up some pictures of your studio.
Okay, yeah.
So it's really cool. You've got those giant sort of wood beams up above, and there is actually a white wall, and then there's the walls that are worn. And then let's
Right.
see. This picture is just you in the front.
That's my joke is, yeah, the picture you put up that's kind of my joke is like, I do have one white wall if you really, really want it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's really, again, I go back to saying like, it has so many options. There is a clean side to it. There's a rugged side to it. There's the green space outside.
Right.
I'm even commissioning someone to put up some, graffiti on one side of the building, and so there'll even be some graffiti on the outside of the building. I mean, it's just really an all-in-one kind of deal, with the exception of the psych wall stuff. I probably won't have that, or green screen. I do have some paper backdrops. I have some things like that if you really just kind of want that look. But other than that, what you see is what you get, kind of deal.
Right. Okay, so where do you want to go next? Do you want to go to boudoir photos? Do you want to go to corporate? Do you want to talk about weddings? Let's talk about some of your other businesses.
Sure. Well, we can say weddings in one sentence, which is I retired in 2020.
Oh,
and my
okay.
last wedding is actually on the 10th of October. So woo, I'm done with that. I've done weddings since I got started, but it's not obviously with this a studio now where, this is my focus now. So, and really my passion is more kind of like one-on-one with someone. So,
Okay.
I love doing like headshots or portraits. But really boudoir is kind of like or intimate portraiture is kind of where we're moving with the terminology, because boudoir, people kind of put, if I say boudoir, someone will think, oh, that's like in a box, and they'll kind of box out what that definition of that
Right.
is. And I asked one time on my social media, on my Instagram, I said, if I took a picture of someone outside of a bedroom, would you still consider that a boudoir, or would you call that something else? And they were like, oh, that's not boudoir.
Right.
And I was like, well, this whole place is not a bedroom. So I definitely have taken boudoir here. And so I think that it has a kind of not a negative connotation, but it has like a limiting definition if you just say boudoir. So I really love the idea of intimate portraiture, which means it could be so much more, and it's not limited to a gender or anything like that. It's open to everybody.
And I saw, because I was looking at your websites, your LinkedIn and all that, like I saw that you have a workshop for photography.
Yep.
Is
I
that
have
happening?
I have a model meetup that's happening on Sunday, October, I think that's the 4th. And basically, I hired about 7 models to come out. And so we're going to be shooting all around the property. And it's going to be limited to about 20 photographers. So it's going to be a small event for such a big place. But in a way, it's a way for especially new photographers to kind of gain an instant portfolio, because you're getting to shoot so many different models and so many different looks that we've already talked about. So like, I'm pretty excited about that. And most all of the models I've already worked with at one point or another, or I'm excited to work with this Sunday. So excited about that.
Right. And do you have any other classes or workshops, or is that just the one for now?
That's the one that I'd actually set it up for May, but as we all know, COVID. So I had to reschedule that for October. And then coming in 2021, I will start doing monthly workshops myself. And so they'll be really small, very focused workshops. Like I'll probably have one that's focused on portraits, one that's focused on like maternity, just things that I've learned over the years. And it's really like, basically, it's a little less on like how to work a camera, but more about like how to treat that specific client and how to get the best. What are you focusing on when you're taking a maternity picture? What are you focusing on when you're taking a headshot? Like, how should it look? That kind of thing, like the elements as well, like the
Right.
weather, if it's a maternity, are you making sure it's nice and warm in here or cooled off? How does she feel and that kind of thing. So.
Right. And we haven't said even where you are. You're in Marietta, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm 1 mile south of the square in Marietta. So super close.
Oh, cool. And we'll get to this at the end again, but do you want to just mention your website or how people can find you?
Oh, sure. It's the Hunter Studios. And then if you're interested in seeing the actual boudoir stuff that I do or intimate portraiture, that would be naturallyboudoir.com.
Very cool.
Hmm.
So, Katie Snyder, who you know,
Yes.
I'm not sure. Did you work with her before? Is she part of this guild or something?
No, I think I met her through Apertrent. I think she was a customer, and I met her one time when she came in,
Okay.
which is how I met a lot of people in Atlanta. So,
Right, right. She was saying when I interviewed her, I just posted her interview a couple days ago, actually, but I interviewed her a couple months ago because I make these Facebook Lives, and then a few
okay.
months later, I make them into an audio podcast. But she was saying that her dream was kind of to travel around with her husband, who's a musician, and she also had a wedding photography business, but she sort of had these associates and she sort of
Mm.
had them run it for a couple years while she traveled with the band, took photos, and wrote a book and all this kind
Oh
of
yeah.
stuff. So she kind of
Mm.
passed that on, but you haven't passed yours on or sold it. It's just over.
Yeah, the wedding stuff is no. Basically, I'm referring. I mean, like over the last again 20 years, I've obviously accumulated quite the number of people that I've either worked with myself personally, or I know them really well, and their work is amazing. And so, like, if someone comes to me and says, or someone refers me to a wedding, I'm like, oh no, not me. Let me go. Let me give you a list of 5 people that I think would be perfect for. Usually, what I do is I ask them what their budget is, and then I find people in that budget range because I
Okay.
think it's obviously like if someone's coming to me saying, "Hey, this bride only has $1,000," then I go find someone who could work that $1,000 instead of like giving them a $5,000 photographer, say, So
Right. Um, do you have any stories from your 20-year career about a shoot that I don't want to say went bad, but maybe it just rained at a wedding, and Katie had a story about how her first wedding she ran out of film and she had to borrow
oh
film
wow,
from the sister of the bride, and that's how she made it through it. But yeah, do you have
yeah.
any crazy stories about any shoots or?
Well, as far as rain, since it is raining here in Atlanta today, I will go ahead and talk about rain. I did a beach wedding for a really close friend of mine's son. He was getting married on the beach, and we all went down to Tybee Island. And you could kind of see the clouds in the distance as we're all, making our descent down to the beach. And so, literally, as the last person in the wedding party lands in their position, and the bride gets down there, it like opened up, like it just
Right.
poured on us. And so I was there with a friend of mine that I used to work with at Aperture, and she does amazing video work now. Jamie, I'm going to not get her last name right because she got married. So, but Jamie was with me down in Tybee, and she was doing the video for me while I was doing the pictures. And we both had someone next to us with an umbrella. So, like, there's pictures of us at this wedding, just like hunched under an umbrella, just trying to capture what we can while the rain is just coming down. It's a whole notebook experience. You know how like that movie went and everything. It was
Right.
so romantic and everything. And they just plowed right through and they kiss each other and they're just like drenched in rain. It was really romantic and sweet. And everybody went back and got dried off. And then we went to the reception. It was so sweet. I mean, like, yeah, it was kind of crazy and kind of scary at first, but we just made sure to stay under the umbrellas and got back to the car as quick as possible with the gear. Of course, that was our main concern, was like gear being out in water, but
Oh
it turned out
yeah.
okay. Everything was safe.
Oh yeah. This is completely unrelated, but I'll give you a little break. So I went to this wedding in Oregon, and the beginning of the wedding, it was really hot out. We were under these trees, and the ring bearer, this little 10-year-old boy, just fainted. He fell like a tree. He was just like, you know, and so that was like a little drama. But I don't know what happened. A bunch of people got drunk, and there was a pool there, and everybody jumped into the pool with their
I've had
even
that
the
happen before.
bride with her wedding dress and tuxes and all this kind of crazy stuff. It was one crazy wedding somewhere in Eugene, Oregon, I think it was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was totally nuts. So this has been great, and we'll go to like your website again, how people can find you at the end. But if you can tell me, Julie, advice that you advice that you might have for
Please.
somebody, maybe starting out, um, as a photographer or video entrepreneur that want to start their own business, what would you say to people who are younger and want to do what you're doing now?
I would say mostly what I say in my workshops is get yourself some business knowledge, because I feel like there's a lot of people with the skills to be a photographer or the skills to be a video, whatever you're going to be in this industry. But the hard part is the business side of it, like knowing how to handle contract, knowing how to use a contract or even to use a contract at all, et cetera, et cetera. And so honestly, I feel like the focus needs to be on how to run your business efficiently, how to market yourself efficiently, how to get out there. It's more than just getting a camera for Christmas and then all of a sudden now I'm a photographer, let me shoot you with the flowers, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's so much more involved. And so that's usually what I tell people is to get some business knowledge under your, I don't know how to say that.
Under your belt?
There you go. Yeah, I was like, there's an under the something there.
Under the belt. Get some business. So it just reminded me of a story that I just heard, and I won't say what the business is, but this building is a very sought-after building in Atlanta, and it's by the Beltline. A lot of people want to use it. And so the contract for these businesses to go into this building is a 2-year contract. And if something goes wrong and your business fails, or I don't even know, like the contract was horrible because COVID happened and they couldn't get out of it. And they still wanted them to pay this ridiculous amount of rent, $3,000, $4,000 a month, when nobody was coming. Like people weren't allowed to come. So, I mean, I'm sure there's horror stories about people trying to start businesses, and I looked into franchises for a while, and it's like, oh my God, like you make a 3%, 7% profit in a pizza place. You make like this much profit, and you're working 80, 100 hours a week. So the question, one last question, how do you, and I asked this to Katie and so many other people on my show, and a lot of people ask me too, because I do a lot of stuff, like how do you do it all? How do you cover all the bases and make sure there's no slippage? Do you have a friend? Do you have a partner? Do you have like someone who does your calendar? Like how do you do it all? Because you have to be in 10 places at once.
Yeah. So I definitely have tons of people that support me, and, all along the way, like I told you, I've been here for like 3 months trying to get this place, ready to open. And I mean, like I've literally been overwhelmed emotionally from I better not start crying on this thing. But like the, just the overwhelming response and love and support from everybody, because not only are they excited about us, just in general, a studio being open in Atlanta, but they're happy for me because they know this is like my dream. And so, like I said, over the years, I've accumulated quite a number of, who I would call friends, in the industry and associates and acquaintances and everything. But I do have like a tight circle of friends that have to also hear me cry or be stressed out, or there's a lot of people that's actually helped me not lose my mind over the fact that it took us 3 months to get in here instead of just the couple of weeks I thought it might take.
Right.
I know there's people going, I told you so. I told you it was going to take longer. But, I'm just a very optimistic kind of person. And so I was trying to see the good and like, it's going to be soon. It's going to be soon. And everybody was trying to tell me how it wouldn't be so soon, but it's fine. We're here now. We're open. So we're just looking forward to all the positive things that's going to come out of this place. And I do have someone that's been working with me since the very beginning. As a matter of fact, I've already thanked him like 100,000 times on different ways in social media, but I literally wouldn't have the studio without him, because he was actually helping me build the business model for another studio that I was managing prior to this studio. And then when I was let go from that, he said, maybe you should go and look and see if there's another place that's available, like for your own. And at first I was just like, what? Like, it's COVID. Like, how am I going to open my own place? And it's one thing to run something of someone else's with their money,
right.
But it's a whole nother ball game when it's like me, my name on the lease and all that kind of stuff. And so I woke up the next day and pulled up Craigslist, and literally this place was the first place that I saw. And it was too good to be true in my mind. I thought something was wrong with it, and I brought him out. That was a Tuesday, and I brought him out Friday with me to look it over. And like I said, 2 weeks later, we were signing the contract, and or I was signing the contract. I mean, he's just been a huge supporter of mine, and he actually handmade that sign for me as well, him and his dad. And so he's been a super big, Scott Moore, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to not say his name, but Scott Moore. And so like he's been helping me with pretty much everything around here and keeping me sane. And well, probably I'm driving him insane, but so we're finally open. I'm excited, and there's so many other people. Oscar of Apiturant has been a huge help and supporter of mine. He's been a friend of mine since right before he went super public in Atlanta. When he first started, it was him and his wife meeting people in a coffee shop, you know, and now he has locations in DC and Texas, and he's got a huge headquarters in Atlanta. And wow. We met a long time ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Flickr.com, but that's how we all kind of met each other on that space. And he sent me a message and said, hey, can I come to one of your, because I had like a little social meetup group that I had created. It's kind of like a spinoff of the APG. And he said, hey, can I come to your group and show you some equipment that I have for rent? And at first I was like, who's this guy? Like, I didn't know him. And I'm so glad that I said yes, but he came down, and he was such a sweet guy. Him and his wife are from Venezuela. They're so sweet. And ever since then, we've been like really, really close. And he's always sponsored or helped or supported me in everything I've ever done along the way.
That's great.
Not only did he provide me a job for 6 or 7 years, he's the first person I went to when I thought about doing this. I was like, hey, is this smart? Like during COVID, do you think this is good? I showed him all of my, numbers, and he was like, yeah, this is great. You're doing, this is, go for it, And I was like, okay. So with his support, I was like, okay, I can do this.
Right.
So.
But there's an inherent optimism that a lot of my guests have, including you, and I've always had it also. And I have to be honest, this COVID thing sort of threw me for a loop because it put everything on hold. And I'm from Boston, but I lived in New York and San Francisco, and I just had this thing about moving, let's go, forward. And everything was like molasses. And I just woke up one day a few weeks ago, and I was like, everything's going to be fine. Let's go. Come on, let's do it. And even thought about, stopping the podcast. And now I've been in magazines and had incredible help from people. There's these two women who are helping me, Bonnie and Kaylee. Cool. I'm part of this network now where I'm doing film interviews and meeting all these people. And it's like, if you build it, they will come. You know what I mean? I mean, my podcast is much smaller than, opening a studio and costs a lot less to open. But still, it's that idea of like, if you make something and you're passionate about it, people will notice. And if you've been doing it for 20 years, people will notice even more. So, So congrats on the studio. So awesome to talk to you. Another optimistic person out there cranking during COVID rather than, curling up and going away. Very, very cool. And where can everybody find you on the web for the boudoir and for the studios?
Yeah, for sure. So the boudoir, or my intimate portraiture that I do personally, is naturallyboudoir.com. And then, of course, like if you want to rent the studio space or you want to see more pictures or get like a little tour of it, you can go to thehunterstudios.com.
Very cool. Everybody check it out. Support local businesses. Julie, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking to you. And
you too, thanks.
I wish you the best of luck, and I want to see what happens over the next year or two. So I'll be following you on Facebook. But good luck with everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.